If you're a parent of a middle school or high school student aiming for Ivy League or top 25 universities, you've probably asked some version of these questions. Does volunteering actually matter? Do school clubs matter? Should my child be doing sports? Does music help? How good do they have to be before it actually makes a difference? Or are we wasting time on all these things? And this is where a lot of families get confused. These are all great questions, and the honest answer is this: it depends. But not in the vague, useless way most people mean it. Because behind all these questions is one bigger fear from parents and students alike. Are we spending years of time, energy, money, and stress on things that barely help in college admissions? And there is a real framework that can help you answer those questions with much more clarity. In this video, I'm going to break down whether volunteering, music, sports, and clubs actually matter, when they help, when they don't, and how to tell whether your child is building something useful or just staying busy, and the levels of involvement that actually change the way these activities are read in admissions. By the end, you should have a much clearer sense of what these activities are actually doing in the admissions process and what to stop overthinking about. And if you're new here, before Top 25 Strategy Lab, I spent nearly 15 years as a head of college counseling at one of the nation's top college counseling organizations. And personally, I've worked with over 1,000 students and families where roughly 3 out of every 4 got into an Ivy League or top 25 school for their intended major, and over 95% got into top 50. I've seen how both ends of this plays out with real families. For example, Chardeep's daughter came to me in 9th grade doing everything, playing a musical instrument, competing in water polo, pursuing community service, while trying to keep up her grades, and was completely overwhelmed. We simplified her focus and concentrated on fewer, more meaningful commitments, helping her go deeper in the things that actually mattered. She ended up getting accepted into Dreamreach University, UCLA, consistently ranked the #1 public university in the US, something she genuinely did not think was possible when we first started. On the other end, Kai's daughter was a strong student who was worried she was not doing enough APs, not enough activities, and uncertain about which ones were the right activities to do. So, instead of adding more, we focused on what she was genuinely good at and helped her stand out in a specific, targeted ways. She ended up getting accepted to over 70% of the schools she applied to across more than a 30-school list comprised mostly of Ivies and top 10 to top 25 universities, including an Ivy League admission with a research scholarship, and received over $500,000 in merit-based scholarships, many of which were full rides to top universities like USC. Two very different starting points, the same underlying principle: less volume, more depth, more intentionality. This is exactly what this video is about. So, this video is for parents of 7th through 11th graders who want calm, honest, data-informed answers. Not fear, not hype, and not the kind of advice that leaves you more confused when you start it. If that's you, stay with me. So, the one principle that governs everything. Before I get into sports, music, clubs, and volunteering specifically, I want to give you one principle that makes sense of all of it. Because without this, everything else just turns into random rules. And here it is. If your child is doing something just because it looks good to colleges, that is the wrong reason to be doing it. And it never works out the way the families hope. Admissions officers at top schools read thousands of applications. They are extremely good at telling the difference between a student who genuinely cares about something and a student who is doing it because someone told them it would help them on their application. That difference shows up everywhere, in the essays, in the recommendations, in the way the student talks about their activities, and in the pattern of what they chose, how long they stuck with it, and how deeply they actually went. A student who has played piano for years because they genuinely love music reads very differently from a student who kept doing it mostly because someone said it looks good. A student who volunteers because they care about the work reads very differently from a student who is clearly just trying to collect hours. Admissions officers can feel that difference. So, the first filter for every activity is this: does my child actually want to be doing this? Now, here's the other side of that, and it matters just as much. If your child genuinely enjoys something, do not drop it just because someone told you it doesn't count for college admissions. The goal is not to build a fake version of your child on paper. The goal is to help a real student grow and let that real person show up clearly in the applications. Because when students are doing things they actually care about, they're able to go deeper, they stay with it longer, they take on more responsibility, they get better, they produce stronger results, and they speak about it with much more conviction. That is what makes an application feel compelling. So, as we go through sports, music, clubs, and volunteering, I want you to keep that one principle in mind. Do not start with, does this look good? Start with, Is this real? And what is it actually building? Now, let's get into how admissions officers actually read these activities. Here's how admissions officers generally read these categories. They are not just asking, did the student volunteer? Did the student play piano? Did the student do soccer? Was the student in Key Club? They're asking, how seriously did the student pursue it? Was there progression? Was there initiative? Was there any real responsibility or output? Does it feel genuine? And how does it fit into the student's larger story? That is the difference between a label and a signal. A student volunteering once in a while because their parent pushed them into it does not read the same as a student who stayed with one service commitment over time, built trust there, and can clearly articulate why it mattered. A student joining 8 clubs freshman year does not read the same as a student who explored early, narrowed down, and then went deep. Same category, completely different signal. That is why families get tripped up about. They focus on the activity name. Admissions focuses on what the activity actually says about the student. Let's talk about school clubs and volunteering together, because these two categories are actually much more similar than most parents realize. Do clubs matter? Does volunteering matter? Yes, but early on, they matter mostly for exploration. Later on, they matter more only if they turn into depth. That is the simplest way to think about both of them. Early on, especially in middle school, 9th grade, or even part of 10th, clubs and volunteering are useful because they help students, 1, try different things, 2, meet different people, test the waters, and figure out what they actually care enough about to keep doing. That is healthy. That is exactly what these activities are supposed to do at that stage. So, if your child joins several clubs in 9th grade or tries a few different service experiences, that's completely fine. In 10th grade, I care much less that your child was simply in a club or did volunteering. Now I care about why they did it, what they actually did, how consistently they did it, whether they grew in responsibility, whether they took initiative, whether they built, led, improved, or created something meaningful, and whether it fits into the student's larger story. This is where a lot of families get fooled by titles. They think president sounds impressive, founder sounds impressive, executive board sounds impressive, but admissions officers do not care much about the title by itself. They care about what the student actually did. Did they just hold the title, or did they grow the club, launch a project, mentor younger students, organize something meaningful, solve a real problem, or create measurable impact? That is what matters. The same thing is true for volunteering as well, too. Scattered, one-off service hours usually does not read strongly. A student who consistently served in one setting, built trust there, took on real responsibility, and can clearly explain why that work mattered reads very differently. So yes, clubs and volunteering can matter, but not because they exist. They matter when they evolve from exploration to consistency to responsibility to leadership to real value add. That is a progression parents need to understand. Also, as a quick side note, if you want the guide to tell you whether your child's extracurricular activities are actually helpful for colleges or not, join T25 Starter. It's free, and I linked it below. Before I get into sports and music, let me say this clearly. I've had plenty of students get into Ivy League and top 25 schools with nothing sports or music related on their application because those simply were not aligned with their interests. What those students did do was use their time wisely and go deeper in the activities they actually cared about. Do sports matter? Does music matter? Yes. But for most students, they matter mainly because of the qualities they build unless the student reaches a much higher level. That is a key distinction. For most students, sports and music are valuable because they help develop discipline, consistency, resilience, coachability, time management, long-term commitment, performance under pressure, and in many cases, identity. Those are real positives. They can absolutely help shape a student into someone more grounded, more mature, and more interesting. But what parents usually want to know is this: does playing a sport or an instrument automatically create an admissions advantage? No, it does not. For most students, sports and music are helpful supporting activities, not major differentiators. They start to matter significantly more only when there is a clear evidence of serious training, serious competition, serious public performance, serious recognition, or in sports, recruitable level performance. If a student casually plays piano, that is fine. If a student casually does a sport, that is also fine. Those can still be healthy, worthwhile, positive parts of the student's life. But from a mission standpoint, they usually become much more meaningful only when they move into much more serious tier. For example, in music, where I've seen it start becoming a noticeably stronger factor is when students compete seriously and place in things like the American Protege International Music Talent Competition or the American Protege International Vocal Competition, or build a similarly strong level of public distinction. In sports, where it starts to matter much more is when the student is highly ranked at the state or national level. Roughly speaking, among the top athletes in the state, or somewhere in the top 50 to 150 nationally, because now you are in a very different category. So yes, sports and music can matter, but most parents need to understand the difference between an activity that is personally valuable and an activity that becomes a major admissions lever. Those are not always the same thing. But here's the thing, that's okay. Your child does not need every activity to become a spike, but you do need to be honest about which category it is actually in. So, how much does it actually matter? The three levels that apply to all of these. Let me pull all of this together because this is where parents usually want the clearest answer. Whether we are talking about school clubs, volunteering, sports, music, or even something like chess, there are basically three levels of admissions impact. Level number one, casual involvement. This is the student who participates, but not at a very high level or serious level. Some examples may be a club member who attends, but is not deeply involved, occasional volunteering, casual sports participation, music that stays more recreational than serious, or chess as a hobby or school club activity without serious tournament results. This level is fine. It helps round out the student. It shows that they are a real person with interest. It can reflect balance, curiosity, and healthy development. But by itself, it is not a major differentiator. Now, let's get into level two, serious school level or sustained involvement. Now we are talking about something much more meaningful. Examples include a student who stayed with the club and eventually led it, a volunteer role that became consistent and responsibility-based, varsity athletics, or strong long-term school-level commitment, years of serious music training, strong ensembles, recitals, competitions, or public performances. Now, this is where the activity starts to carry more weight because now it shows consistency, progression, real-time investment, stronger responsibility, and more serious engagement. This level won't become the centerpiece of the application, but it can absolutely become a meaningful part of the application. Level three, elite, recruitable, top tier for admissions. This is where the activity moves into a completely different category. Examples include recruitable athletics, truly elite performance level in music, unusually high impact service or leadership work, clubs or activities that grew into something clearly exceptional with major results or recognition. Top tier competitive chess with serious ranking and recognition. Or in sports, this is often where the student athlete is highly ranked at the state level or meaningfully competitive at the national level, because once you get into that top end of that range, you may be approaching real recruitment territory where the admissions impact can become very significant. In music, this is where students are not just trained, but are competing and placing at a genuinely high level with honors, performances, or distinctions that clearly separate them from the average strong high school musician. So now we're not just talking about rounding out the profile. Now we are talking about a major strategic asset. This is where an activity can become one of the student's clearest differentiators. So the right way to think about all of these categories is not, does this matter or not? The better question is, at what level is my child doing it, and what signal is it actually sending to the universities? That is a much more useful question. Now, let's come back to the emotional question behind all of this. Are we wasting time? And the honest answer is you are not wasting time if the activity is doing one of these three things. One, helping your child genuinely grow. Two, helping your child discover or deepen an interest. Number three, helping your child build discipline, responsibility, direction, or signal over time. That is not wasted. What is wasted is doing things solely because they look good, forcing activities the student does not care about, spreading time across too many shallow commitments, or chasing labels instead of asking what the activity is actually building. If your child genuinely loves music, keep doing music. If they genuinely love their sport, keep doing the sport. If they care about service, let them go deeper in service. If clubs are helping them explore and then narrow towards stronger interests and passions, great. The key is not whether the category is good. The key is whether the activity is contributing to growth, direction, depth, or signal. That is what matters. So, if you're trying to make good decisions here, this is the framework I would use. First, stop asking whether an activity counts. Start asking, what is this helping my child become? Second, let your child explore more broadly earlier on. Freshman year, especially clubs, activities, sports, and music and service can all be useful for exploration. Third, once patterns start emerging, narrow down. Do not keep stacking random things forever. And fourth, go deeper in the activities that are genuine, sustainable, and capable of producing stronger responsibility, output, or identity over time. And fifth, remember that not every activity has to be a spike. Some activities can simply round out the student in healthy ways. That is perfectly fine. The mistake is when the entire profile is made up of nothing but rounded out activities and nothing ever becomes deep. That is when a profile starts to look like every other average high schooler with surface level breadth, but not depth. So let me leave you with this. Volunteering, school clubs, sports, and music can all matter for college admissions, but they matter very differently depending on whether they are casual, serious, or truly top tier. What does matter is when they are genuine, sustained, developed seriously, and part of a larger story that actually makes sense. The real goal is not to make your child look busy. The real goal is to help them build a life and profile with enough depth, direction, and signal that an admissions officer can immediately understand who they are. And this made you realize your child may be doing a lot of different things, but not necessarily building the right kind of profile. That is exactly why I built T25 Starter. It's free to join, and inside you'll find the extracurricular depth framework, the spike versus scatter activity list resource, grade specific guidance, and the strategy tools to help you make better decisions about where your child's time actually goes. The link is in the description.